Welcome to Stevie G's Energy Corner. Today we got Jack Deanna coming in from Philly talking about geothermal, reducing our energy consumption in commercial and residential. How you doing this morning, Jack?
Hey, Steve, if I was any better, I'd be you.
Okay. All right. Usually I say the same phrase, but I say I'd be a tween and one of us would be in Florida. So I guess you're feeling the same way because I know you got white stuff on the ground probably up there like I do.
We do. We have about 5 inches as of yesterday or 2 days ago.
Yeah, damn. Well, I got like 2.5, so I only got half of it.
Are you still in Oklahoma?
No, man, I'm up here in Maryland.
Oh,
I'm just south of you, baby. I'm like about, I don't know what, 2.5 hour drive
yeah,
to Baltimore. Yeah. So I know it's been a while since you and I talked. We were out in Vegas for NASCO and everything, and out there, and you're doing all that stuff with geothermal. And I know that we moved the needle late 80s, early 90s into the commercial side, the federal side. So what's been going on since, the past 20 years, since you and I have been, losing a little bit of our hair and going gray?
Honest to God, yeah. Even though, like you said, this technology is 40 years old. And by the way, I should tell you, and I think I did, Steve, I'm the chairman of the International Ground Source Heat Pump Association Board of Directors. So I've been in this business for about 40 years. And even though we tried to move it back in the early 90s and 2000s, when I was director of the Geothermal Heat Pump Consortium under Clinton and Bush, it stagnated there for a while. Then we had all kind of other things going on. But right now, it's never been a better time. As of 2021, this technology was finally recognized as a renewable resource. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
And actually, it's the only renewable that the new administration actually backs. So even though we appear to be a brand new technology, we're actually 40 years old, so we're well established. What's been happening now is, to your point, Steve, we started out in residential, but now it's more commercial and institutional. In fact, tying in with what you're doing, the great work your foundation's doing with children's hospitals and things like that, I'm looking at, we've all heard of thermal energy networks. It's a big buzzword now. Well, I'm looking at using pre-K to 12 schools as the anchor tenant for those thermal energy networks, and using that school as the center for the loop field. So this technology, so that everybody knows, uses the energy under our feet, the energy we already own, to heat and cool the building. Now, people didn't recognize it years ago, but 40% of all the energy used in homes or in anything, in any facility, is heating and cooling and water heating. So that's exactly what this technology does. And as you know, the International Ground Source Heat Pump Association is the people that developed all the training, all the standards. We used to be in Oklahoma State University. We're now a separate 501c6, and we're out of Springfield, Illinois. So what's really great about this is that we've just developed all new training coming out this year. The training that we used to have, you and I took 25 years ago, has since been new and improved. And
so are you guys still doing the old butt fusion?
We are doing butt fusion, but there's electrofusion. There's all kind of other things that we can do now. Even though this is a 40-year-old technology, the stuff that we learned about 30, 40 years ago still works today. We're still using HDPE, which is indestructible. When you put a loop filled in, you're putting a loop filled in for a 50 to 100-year pull. And I don't know if I told you, I'm a great grandfather. So what we're doing now is going to benefit my great granddaughter's kids. So we're putting in stuff that's a generational innovation, so to speak. It's something that we've been trying to do for years, and now we have everybody looking at it. And that brings me to another point. When something becomes recognized, we get people coming out of the woodwork that everybody's an expert. You know what I mean, Steve? We've
Oh
seen.
yeah, we know that. Yeah.
You go out and buy a magnetic sign, and all of a sudden you're an expert. Well, with these big jobs, campuses, college universities, pre-K to 12 schools, large developments, they've got to, even though this is caveman technology, in other words, if you walk into a cave, you're into our technology, you still need training. And that's what the International Ground Source Heat Pump Association does. And I have to give a shout out because in all these 40 years, the GeoExchange, our sister organization, has been working diligently with federal and state governments to make sure that we stay in their purview. We stay in their viewpoint as the best renewable technology out there.
Well, we know that because we know that down there, the Navy in Hawaii, our good friend Tony Cooper installed it for Amoresco down there in Hawaii, and all the commercial buildings, the housing, all that stuff. And so, and I know that it works anywhere. We've always said from the Antarctica to the Arctic Circle through the equator, we can put this stuff anywhere, right?
Absolutely. And what's really interesting, I think I mentioned it before. This morning, I was on the call early this morning with Australia, and 9 o'clock this morning, Eastern time, my time, I was on the phone with Ireland. So this is an all-American technology, but it's being used all over the world. In other words, there's more going on in Europe right now than there are with us, but we're gaining. We're really, people are finally recognizing that they can put this in a development. And now with the new, you've all heard about the big, beautiful bill that was passed, even though it took away the residential investment tax credit, the commercial tax credit is still there, good for another 10 years. And the other thing is, it's allowing us to do a third-party loop leasing. So what stifled this technology up until this point is the fact that we're higher first cost because we're putting in this 50 to 100-year asset. Now
Right.
with third-party loop leasing, we have people that see it as a thermal asset, and whether it be a utility or a investor, they're seeing this as a real good way to put money into their pocket.
Well, yeah, and Jack, back to that point, in the early 90s, there was Gary Eubank and Morris Lovett, you, me, Dr. Bose, Dr. Turner, from Oklahoma State University. And yeah, I said Oklahoma State, even though I went to the Red School, right? That we looked at putting a well field in for like a neighborhood, right? Like a whole community.
Right.
And then it could heat the pool, the community center, and also take care of all the houses because they'd all be connected to that center loop. And that's what you're talking about. That fast forward now to 2025, 2026, we're not going to do that for cities and commercial buildings.
Yeah, everything old is new again, Steve. I see people looking at this. When I started out in this business as a utility employee, we had a geothermal company that back in the late 80s, early 90s, I couldn't give this away, so I did. I owned everything. And then when I left there, that stopped. But now people are acting like they just discovered the sun,
Yeah, I know. Isn't that kind of funny?
You know what I'm saying? It's like, wow, we can do this. And you look at this and I go, like you said, back in the 90s when we were doing it, it was like innovative. Lou Prax and guys like that from DOE thought this was great. If you recall, Lou.
Yeah, I do. And they thought we were young kids that we didn't know Jack. Remember guys from Train that were like 40, right. 50 years old would look at us and go, well, if you want to do this, I'll select me, but I think you're crazy, kid.
Well, now we're no longer the kids. In fact, we're the seniors of this whole industry. And what's interesting is we're still here. We're still involved. And the stuff that you're doing with your foundation, it really fits in with what we're talking about. You're talking about helping kids in children's hospital, or helping people that are less fortunate than ourselves. What I'm talking about is the fact that pre-K to 12 schools in the United States, the average age is 50 years old.
Yeah,
so
they are.
And where we live, you and I, and actually always over to Middle America, probably in Oklahoma also, they're heating only schools, and no one would go to work in an office if it was heating only. So what I'm saying is, let's use this technology, make schools better, give them a better learning ability. And there's two Harvard and Yale studies that say higher relative humidity impedes the transmission of respiratory viruses, which is another name for COVID. So now we're not only talking about energy efficiency or lower utility costs or renewable energy, we're talking health and safety. So the interesting part, getting back to my point, is people that are discovering this and saying they're an expert. ICHPA has brand new training. They have brand new certifications. GeoExchange is once again representing us with the governments, with federal, state, and local governments. But the fact is, if you're not trained in this, even though it's a caveman technology, you're putting something in the ground that lasts 50 years. You better know what you're doing.
Oh yeah,
and that's where ICHPA comes in. Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember when we first started the test. Remember, we had to figure out how much the Earth could absorb or kick out, with thermal conductivity. Remember how we used to, you, Gary, and I, we used to sit out there in that little itty bitty trailer, running the test for 24 hours, right, to see.
And by the way, Garen's still doing it. Garen still is.
I saw doing it. I just saw him a couple of weeks ago down there in AEE. In Atlanta. I saw him down there at the conference. I saw him there. So, hey, speaking of training and everything, you guys got a major your annual conference coming up in April, right?
We do. And what's even better is I actually twisted your arm to do a golf tournament. So our conference in April is at the Maristar Casino. It's April 13th and 15th, and it'll kick off with the SGC Foundation golf tournament. But the other thing is, here's what you're going to get. The fact, like I said to you, this technology delivers a triple E benefit: energy independence and security, economic prosperity and sustainability, meaning jobs, and environmental stability and resilience. But the big thing is, this conference, you're going to learn about a lot of things. The conference is talking about grid stability, which we're all looking at, wondering whether we're going to be able to perform without electricity. What this technology does, we found out through some of the work from Western farmers, is that for every installed ton of capacity, we reduce peak load by 0.55 kW. So now we're talking about not only helping the end user, we're also helping a more sustainable grid. And what you're going to learn in this conference, which, like I said, is at Ameristar Casino in Missouri. It's a really great facility in the greater St. Louis area. But you're going to be able to go to classes for thermal energy networks, third-party loop leasing, workforce development, sales and marketing, residential. And by the way, we're going to have two classes there: residential design and commercial designer. So you'll be able to attend the conference, go to classes, learn about all these things. Primarily, you should become a member. If you want to be in this business, you should be a member of ICHPA. Definitely.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Hey, you say the name of the casino. I did a little looking up on that deal, when we figured out where we're going to do the golf course, in St. Peter, right?
Yep.
It's in St. Charles, and of course it's right on the river there. But St. Charles is where Lewis and Clark began their exploration of moving out west and checking out the Rockies and everything.
So really? Wow.
Yeah, so there's a big town square statue of Lewis and Clark and their dog, okay? And there's did some checking with people I know that live there, that coming out to support the conference and the golf tournament, that there's a couple wineries there. There's a great barbecue place, a bunch of little stores so they can bring their spouses out with them, do some shopping. Got all that stuff. So it's not just a casino stuck out there in the middle of no man's land. It's got a whole community, and Old Town, St. Charles, is right there where they built this casino.
Oh, that's cool. I haven't been there yet. I'm going there.
I don't know how
probably.
you pick this, Jack. I don't know how you pick places, but man, you picked a hell of a good place when you picked this one for April. Okay.
I have to give it to our executive director and our board of directors. We were looking, we had it in Champaign, Illinois last year, which is kind of tough to get to. So we looked at ease of getting to, and Ameristar has really been fabulous working with us because they've get that. I live near 5 casinos, as you know, right outside Philly here, and I'm right by. So I'm very familiar with casinos, but this casino, I've taken a virtual tour. It's really cool. And
you're only 15, and you're only 15 minutes from the St. Louis airport. You're outside. You don't have to go through St. Louis to get to it. You're at the airport that's already north and west of downtown St. Louis. So you're already there. You only got about a 10, 15-minute drive and you're at the casino.
Well, what I'm excited about also is the fact that there's a real need for this technology in schools, especially where we live, especially, like I said, where I live in Philadelphia, the average age of school is 70 years old. Now, you don't drive a car for 70 years that I know of. But I
haven't seen one yet there, buddy.
No. I've had some old cars, but none that I want to keep. But the fact that we're looking at, like I said, I'm impressed with what you've done with your foundation. You and I go back a long, long ways. But the fact that you're doing this and including the Children's Hospital and Boone, is it Boone Center?
Boone Center. Boone Center hires all the disabled kids, like from St. Louis. Like one of the kids that's going to come out there, his dad used to work for the TV station, videotaping all the sports and stuff. He had granny's seizures and had a third of his brain removed. Well, he's like 5 years old. So he's like 27 now, but this center hired him, taught him how to do stuff. So they hire a lot of the kids that have gone through, the disabilities of going to the hospital for children's and that, and they hire them. So basically your conference is going to help the community in several ways. One with the Children's Hospital. Okay. And then hiring these kids to be able to actually are working and making a living, so you guys are right there in the middle of the community. So when you say, hey, we're coming here to do this, you're also reaching out to help the community that you're hosting the conference in.
Absolutely. And you know what? I've always looked at my whole deal is pay it forward. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I've probably gotten in my lifetime maybe 50 people jobs from all walks of life. But I really do believe that there's a role for everybody, no matter what your situation is, whether you're disabled. And by the way, I'm kind of disabled because I'm going to be 80 and I can't raise my arms anymore.
Dang, Jack, you're 10 years older than me. I thought I was an old Ford at 70, but you know what? I was thinking today, when you say that, I woke up today thinking, shit, I remember started work around 12, 13 years old where your parents had to drive you down, to the city legal office to get paperwork.
To get working papers.
Permit to go to work, So shit, you and I at 70, 80 years old, we've been working since we're 12 or 13 and we're still kicking it and going.
And you know what? And we're doing it for a reason. What you're doing and what I'm doing is the best work of life, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
I'm here because this technology, you believe in it. You believe in what you're doing. And that's the reason why we're doing it. People say, I've got my siblings asking me why I'm not retired. Well, my wife is only 60 and she's still working. And this to me is not work.
That's how I look at it, Jack. That's how I look at it. I said, as long as it's fun, it ain't really a job, right? Because you enjoy doing what you do every day.
That's exactly right. And you know what? I really do appreciate. I'm glad we ran into one another again in that NASCO.
Of all places, Jack, we were in Vegas.
We were in Vegas. But I'll tell you, I think with people looking at this, especially engineers who are doing the same old thing and want to bring in a new technology that's 40 years old and well developed. But this is the way they can improve their bottom line. The best thing is this technology is 90% trades. It's 90% blue collar.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about, I have a thing called Road to 30%. If we would get 30% of the market share, we would have to create or retain 50 million jobs, 5 million jobs, 5 million jobs.
I believe
that's
that.
A lot of work.
Hey, Jack, I got a question for you about going back to the conference, okay?
Yeah.
In training, we know we've done schools a bunch. We know how, residential housing. I know Optera Energy is doing a lot of work with Balfour Beatty that oversees the privatization of the housing, on the military bases. Yeah. And I know they're looking at doing geothermal at those. So I'm going to reach out to Optera and see if they can get some of the Balfour Beatty reps to come to the conference and learn how they can put this on the military bases that they're doing the privatization of the housing that doesn't have.
Would they own the loop, Steve? Would they own the loop? Would they be the loop ownership?
Could be either way. The military. They could give it to the military, where the military would own it, or they could actually be the privates owning the loop.
Now here's the interesting part about that, because if they owned it, they can get the 30% investment tax credit and another 10% so 40% of the whole project, of the whole geothermal project, would go back in their pocket.
Oh, wow. That I didn't think of that, Jack. That's a great idea. We got to talk, because I'm going to get Brad Borger, that I know really well, just was out in San Diego with him and everything, talking to the Navy, to get with you and then with Balfour Beatty, because I know there's several projects down there that they're doing the housing down there in Georgia, Florida. They got almost the whole Southeast. Okay. So, this technology makes them more energy secure, because you can't take it away. In other words, when you have rooftop units on there, they can take away if it comes to it, they can take away your energy, right? They can take away your HVAC. This one is either inside or underground. So you're more secure. Yeah, and you remember in the late 80s and 90s, not to date ourselves any more than we really are dated, but you remember when we did some of the early training for Southern Company? They're on the regulated side of their federal group. Well, down there in Georgia, they've got that whole deal, those bases that we're talking about, that Balfour Beatty's got the housing, and they're doing work on the base and doing housing. So we can get Balfour Beatty. We bring in one of our old partners, Southern Company, Georgia Power, the utility. And then when we go down to Florida, we can get our buddies down there in Florida Power and Light, with Eric Myers, Well,
do you know who's going to be our keynote speaker? Steve Nygren from Serenity. So he's already done this. So that would fit right in with what you were just saying. Here's a guy who's doing it. He owns the loop field. He owns everything in Serenity. He's going to be one of our keynote speakers, which is really interesting, because he's been doing this for 20 years.
This is what's really going to be great. And like you said, I'm glad you picked St. Louis, but everybody goes to Missouri. But, you're also smart by picking the center of the country, because it's the same airfare distance going from the East Coast to the West Coast, coming to the Midwest. And you're not flying people all the way across that 5-hour flight, either gaining 3 hours or you lose 3 hours when you fly back. So you really did well by picking the location. Like I said, St. Charles has got a lot of things for people to do, set up, receptions, your vendors can have a heck of a hospitality, area that you don't have to be sitting, although you are in a casino, but, a lot of people don't want to be sitting in those meeting rooms, at night.
Absolutely correct. Another point, Steve, to your point, if you come there, you're going to be able to meet the movers and shakers in this industry. In other words, the people that actually are doing the work, that you don't have to guess whether or not, do they know what they're doing, So
exactly.
That's the interesting part, especially if you're trying to get into this business. Here's the way to do it. Let's talk to the people that have been doing it. We're, as you know, because you're a part of it, we're family, okay?
Oh, yeah.
This is not worried about, geez, Harry's my competitor, so I'm not going to talk to him. we're all looking to move this technology forward. And you'll be able to meet Ryan Doherty, the head of GeoExchange. He can give you some insights if you've got problems with your local government. You can meet Jeff Hammond, our executive director. All of our board of directors are going to be there. We'll be glad to show you what you need to do to get into this. And the other thing is, you've heard about these thermal energy networks. Let's show you how it's going to, so it doesn't fail. If you're a utility, this is a thermal asset that you should own, that you can look for grid stability, right? Rather than pay $80 million to upgrade just a small subsidization, you can put that money into ground loops that you own, whether you be a gas, water, or electric utility. So you're right. Let's bring all these people in, because St. Louis, this is the middle of the country, but the grid that everybody's looking at right now, this is the only renewable that actually works 24/7, 365 days a year. We don't need the sun to shine or the wind to blow. So, hey,
and you don't need it to be 72, 75 degrees. You can do it in Alaska where it's, butt cold, to an Eskimo and cold to us, in Philly. You can do it. You can do it
in Hawaii.
Yeah, you can do it in Hawaii. You can do it in any soils because, we learned how to do it in New Mexico, Arizona, where it's particularly sand, and you got to get the grout right so that the grout then sticks to the pipe. So you got that thermal conductivity, the transfer of heat. So we've learned a lot over the past, I'd say 25, 40 years, like you say.
Absolutely. And you know what? We still need more people. We need younger people, not to denigrate any of us old guys, but we need younger people. I'll tell you what's changing. What's changing is the fact that we're getting a lot of female engineers that aren't afraid of change. Males are definitely afraid of change. Like you and I are wearing the same clothes we wore when we were 13. They're just more expensive and bigger.
Hey, you know what they used to say about the old engineers, don't you? First they'd have a belt, okay? They put a belt on to keep their pants up, okay? And then they'd go, well, I need a backup plan. So then they'd put a rope in there with the belt. So in case the belt broke, the rope would hold up their pants, right? So
then they put suspenders on.
They put the suspenders on just in case if the rope or the belt broke, they'd still be able to walk around town with their pants up, right? So
they're still doing that. What we're trying to show them is you don't need all this backup. The ground is your friend. But if you don't know what you're doing, then it's going to be, the old days of holding up your thumb and figuring out what you need are gone. We have all the training necessarily, and being at this conference. And like I said, I can't thank you enough for becoming involved. I'm glad we spoke, because this is a great way to kick off this conference.
Oh, I am too. Because it's a great way, because not only that are we taking stuff in the soil and everything, everybody can go out, like you say, to the golf course, they can team up. It's a perfect way that the drillers can work with the engineers and play golf. Right. The engineers can be out there with the owners, the different vendors. They can advertise on any of the holes, they can have any contest game, have anybody they want out there to talk, education, talk trash, whatever. And know that they're helping the community, because every dollar that comes in is going out to help the St. Louis community of the two children's hospitals and, like you say, Boone Center. So, not only are you getting to play golf and have fun, right? Talk trash to everybody, but you're doing a good service to the local community that you can say, hey, I feel good about what I'm doing today.
And you know what, Steve, this just shows you that our industry, our community, never stops. Yeah. In other words, you and I haven't seen one another in maybe 10 years, but it's like we talked yesterday.
St. Louis is so cool because you can do geothermal with the water right there, right? We can do water to water units. You put a flat plate heat exchanger. I'm not even an engineer and I know how this stuff works, because I've been in it.
Yeah, it's right? Scary that neither am I. It's scary that we know how it works. Maybe we've been here that long. Yeah. I'm trying to get this moving before I become geothermal, if you know what I mean.
Hey, look, before we turn into like oil, like the dinosaurs, is that what you're trying to tell me?
Right. Yeah.
Shit, Jack, come on, baby. Come on, we can still hang with the young guys.
I've got another 20 years. But I'm really excited about St. Louis. I think this is going to be one of our best conferences. We keep building. When we left Oklahoma State, we've just been building on this process. And thanks to the leadership of Ryan and Jeff and a great board of directors, we're moving forward. The big thing was, and we've had a one of our members actually gave us the money to develop new training, and I can't thank them enough. They know who they are, but they're spectacular. We'll do we're going to honor them at the conference. But the fact is that you couldn't figure out a better way to learn about this technology and to have fun, because it starts off with having a networking, playing golf, and then you can move right into the casino. But for the trade show and for the conference. But Steve, I'm excited. This is great.
Hey, I'm excited. Let everybody know. Let everybody know. Tell everybody how they can get a hold of you, because I know John, or the guru behind us that makes us look good, will put it out there when he uploads the show. But tell everybody your email address, how to get a hold of you.
Yeah, my name is Jack Dienna, and my email address is jdienna, dienna, at geogo-nii.org. And my phone number is 610-659-4998. Like I said, I'm ambassador. I'm an ambassador for the industry. I'm also chairman of the board of IGSHPA and an executive director of the Geothermal National and International Initiative. So, Steve, I want to thank you for doing this. This is great. Looking forward to having a great time in St. Louis, working with you up to that point. I want to tell everybody, have a very happy holiday, a Merry Christmas, and a safe and happy New Year.
You got it, Jack. Same to you, and I look forward to us being in St. Louis, taking this the next step in the market, getting some more people educated. I'll work with the military to get them all out to the site.
And by the way, if they want to learn more about IGSHPA, it's igshpa.org. Capital igshpa.org. Nothing changed.
You haven't changed the letters in 40 years. They're still the same, baby.
That's right. Steve, thanks very much, and great job. Super. And John, you too.
I got you and Jeff the flyer. I'm going to make sure that the logo that he sent me, I just pulled it off the website, but I'll go put that one in there. If you guys can get it into your marketing material for the conference, and we'll go from there.
I'm going to also give it to my marketing company that does all my stuff. They'll put it out all over LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook, everywhere. So
cool, because the website's up. They can go register today. If they got any questions or if they want to do something different than what we got listed, we're open because we're flexible. We can do anything they want. You know, we can do the red solo cups, for Toby Keith, all that good stuff,
Toby's an Oklahoma guy, isn't he?
He was an Oklahoma dude, man. I played golf with Toby. He used to own the OU golf course when he fixed it up for the university. Toby was a heck of a guy. I should have been a cowboy, baby. Should have been a cowboy.
That if he went to did he go to OU?
He went to OU. Yeah, he went. He
said I should have been a cowboy.
Yeah,
I should have been a cowboy.
Yeah,
for Oklahoma State.
I know that, man. So hey, have a great day. Have a great weekend. Like I said, Merry Christmas to you. Happy New Year. And right after the new year, we'll be cranking this out big time. Get some sponsors. We'll lean on our buddy Tony Cooper at Edge Geo to come out there. Bruce Hoffman of Golf Geo down in Louisiana, down in New Orleans to come up into St. Louis. So,
hey, that's super. Steve, take care. Happy New Year and have a Merry Christmas.
You do the same, Jack. Thanks for coming on the show.